Hello, this is Michael Tracy, and this is a follow-up to the video about Odell's sighting of Mallory and Irvine at 12:50. I'll assume you've watched that earlier video, and I want to discuss two additional dispatches that I was unaware of when I made the first video. These were published back in 1924 and 1925, but I missed them, but they are useful to understanding what happened. So let me just show you the dispatches and then get into where Norton came up with the numbers he uses in one of those dispatches. The first was sent from Odell at North Cole to Norton at Advanced Base Camp on June 9th. The original dispatch seems to have gone missing, but Norton recorded the following in his diary. Mallory and Irvine were last seen by Odell from 12:50 p.m. on 8th, going strong about the final step before the pyramid. This appears to confirm my fears as above. Now, that last sentence refers to an earlier part of his dispatch where he said they probably died. Now, getting to the second dispatch, this was sent by Norton to the Times of London on June 11th. The relevant part reads, Mallory and Irvine perished on the mountain beyond all doubt. They were last seen by Odell from Camp 6, going strong for the top. I have not yet seen Odell, but estimate that this was about 11 in the morning of the 8th, and the point reached at that time by the climbers was about 28,000 feet. So that solves the big mystery. If you figured it out, you can stop the video. The rest is just going to explain why Norton picked those particular numbers. So where did Norton get those numbers? Odell's original description places them at the third step, which is about 28,400 feet at 12:50. And Norton's estimate is 400 feet lower, 28,000 feet at 11 a.m. There were no more communications from Odell, so Norton's estimate is just a fabrication. But to see where he got those numbers, we need to take a look at his climb. So Norton and Somerville left high camp at 26,700 at 6:40 a.m., June 4th. 1 hour later, they were at the base of the incline and headed up diagonally. At about noon, Somerville was not feeling well, decided to stop and rest while Norton proceeded. Shortly after Norton goes on, Somerville takes this picture. This is taken about 28,000, just below the start of the second step, and you can see Norton heading diagonally up across the yellow band. Norton climbs past this point for approximately 1 hour and turns around a little after 1 p.m. from his high point, later determined to be 28,126 feet. He rejoins Somerville a little bit after 2 p.m., and Somerville has been sitting on the ledge about 200 feet below the second step the entire time, so the weather was pretty warm enough to allow for that. They join up, they return to high camp, they reach it about 3:40 in the afternoon. Norton recorded the time from the descent from 28,126 to high camp is 2.5 hours. So in general, for the 1924 climbers, descending took a little less than half the time of the ascent. From high camp, Norton and Somerville then proceed all the way down to North Cole, and they arrive later that same day, but at night. At North Cole, Norton develops snow blindness and is carried into Advanced Base Camp by a group of Sherpas. They take turns carrying him down on their backs, and this is quite a feat of mountain rescue. There is film of this, of Norton being carried into ABC in the 1924 movie Epic of Everest, and it is quite impressive that the Sherpas are able to actually carry him, and they're moving very quickly as they do it. It's a interesting piece of footage. But beyond his snow blindness, Norton didn't appear to have any other major problems. After a couple days, he's recovered his vision, and by June 9th, he's back up and about working around Advanced Base Camp. So on the evening of June 9th, Norton receives a dispatch that was carried down by the Sherpas from North Cole from Odell about Mallory and Irvine going strong, about the final step before the pyramid. So although all the other dispatches on the mountain, the one about Mallory saying, it's a bloody load for climbing and look for me at 8 a.m. along the rock band, those were mountain dispatches. All these other dispatches for the time have been published. This one's gone missing, but we do have the record of it in Norton's diary. The diary entry clearly mentions 12:50 and the final step. I refer to that as the third step, but at the time, the third step was not in the vocabulary for the expedition. They referred to it as the final step before the pyramid. So on June 9th, he has that dispatch from Odell. 2 days later, June 11th, he sends a dispatch to the Times where he moves them 400 feet lower and roughly 2 hours earlier in their time to 11 a.m. Looking at Norton's climb times, you can see here on the picture, had he headed up to the first step, he would have been there about 11 a.m. And for whatever reason, Norton wanted to place the climbers on the first step, so he invented an altitude and time that agreed with that. Whatever Norton's motivations were, Odell eventually decides to go along with them. And we can trace the evolution of Odell's version. His first version from June 9th is that they were about the final step before the pyramid. On June 14th, he makes a dispatch to the Times, and that's recorded as a prominent rock step at a short distance before the base of the final pyramid. And the final expedition report, published much later, has them on a snow slope leading up to what seemed to be the last step but one before the base of the final pyramid. And later in that piece, he adds the part about it possibly being the first step. I discussed that at length in the first video, so I'm not going to go over it again here. In any case, wherever the confusion of Odell came from, he did return to Everest in 1938, and he climbed up above North Col. He did not attempt to revisit the spot of his sighting, nor is there any indication he attempted to clarify which of the steps he might have seen Mallory and Irvine at. And although Odell wrote about a great many things in the 1938 expedition report, the one thing he did not write about was his earlier sighting of Mallory and Irvine. He never clarified which potential step he might have seen them at. The only reference from Odell or about Odell and Mallory and Irvine in the 1938 expedition report is in the introduction, where they introduce Odell as follows. N.E. Odell was in the front rank of mountaineers with long and varied experience in the Alps, the Rockies, the polar regions, and the Himalaya. His efforts on Everest in 1924 in support of Mallory and Irvine were well known, and it has always been a matter for regret that he did not have a place in one of the climbing parties. So that's the evolution of Odell's story, as well as the origin of the idea that they were seen at the first step.